You are an amazing security engineer. You are an amazing incident responder, but you should not be a CISO. Welcome to Life of a CISO. I'm Dr. Eric Cole, your host, and we'll be taking you on a journey each week on what it takes to be a CISO and what are solutions that you can implement today if you are currently a Chief Information Security Officer or if you want to be one in the future. This is Life of a CISO. Welcome to this week's episode of Life of a CISO with yours truly, Dr. Eric Cole, where we get to go in and talk about the role of the Chief Information Security Officer and what are the key requirements in order to be successful. And one of the things I always like doing in every area of my life, from personal to family to business, is I always look for patterns. You look for patterns or things that continue to happen or continue to occur. And I do that with the questions. And we've been getting a lot of great feedback on all of the videos. I believe we're up to episode 15 or 16 now. I just get to do the fun stuff and I have my team produce them. But one thing I've noticed when I've gone through the comments on a lot of the episodes is the pattern that keeps coming up is this strategy versus tactics. That still seems to be this big roadblock that a lot of people have with a CISO. So I just wanted to spend a little time talking about that. And strategy is high level. So you're coming up with the overall strategy for the organization. What are the high level things that we want to accomplish? And what are going to be the metrics to measure them? So for example, a strategy that an organization could have is that we want to make sure that all servers that are externally facing are patched within 20 days. That's the strategy. It doesn't matter the operating system. We're not worried about the details. We're not worrying about anything like that. The strategy is that we have found one of the top ways that our organization is being compromised, one of the main threats is that people are going after and targeting our external systems because the IP addresses are public and available. And the biggest vulnerability is that we're missing patches, and these are often exploited after 20 days. So based on that risk analysis of the threats that have the high likelihood and the vulnerabilities that have the biggest impact, we as a CISO would come up with a strategy that says they need to be patched within 20 days. And then what we're going to do is we're going to ask for a simple metric. We just want to know at the end of every month how many patches have not been applied that are over than 20 days. That's all we want to know. So we can do it by server, by patch, whatever we want, but we're just going to come up with a simple metric that we measure. Now, if it comes back that every month we're seeing that there's 5 or 6 patches and 5 and 6 patches and 5 and 6 patches, we're then going to start asking questions. We're going to start saying, okay, which servers are they on and who do they belong to? And this just happened with one of our clients where they consistently had 5 or 6 patches that weren't being applied. When I started asking questions, it turned out that they were all from 2 servers, and those 2 servers were run by the same admin, and that admin didn't think that patching was important. So essentially, we had a conversation. We explained to them why it was important, and they basically looked at me and said, Eric, I don't agree with that. Guess what? They're no longer an admin at that company because there were 30 admins, right? And 29 of them understood the importance and understood the criticality. Once again, I'm not trying to be a jerk, but remember, if you're a CISO and you're a leader, you have to remove problems. You need to try to fix them. But if you have somebody who clearly is putting the organization at risk and they are not doing what they're supposed to, they need to be removed. I know it's a hard thing for folks that are leaders, but one of the best pieces of advice I can offer you when it comes to hiring is hire slow and fire fast. If you're not sure if somebody is a good fit, don't hire them. Get data, get information, get questions. Make sure you are 100% sure they're a good fit. Then if they come on board, and I know after a week or two, nobody wants to get rid of anybody. Right? I just had a CISO I'm coaching now. He goes, Eric, I know this person isn't a good fit. but they've only been here 10 days. And if I fire them after 10 days, that's pretty bad. I'm going to look like a jerk. So I said, okay, so let me get this straight. You know they're not a good fit. You know they're not going to work out. So instead of getting rid of them in 10 days, you're going to keep them for 10 months. And then once they get to the point where they just drive you totally crazy, you're going to a therapist twice a week. And once again, there's nothing wrong with that, right? But they're making you nuts. And then you finally have to get rid of them. And then there's a huge problem. You're telling me that's a better solution? You're telling me that's a better option, right? Absolutely not. So that's one of the things that's tied to what I'm talking about is a lot of technical people that become CISOs because they think it's the technical path, which it's not. They were never given training on leadership. They were never given training on running teams or handling teams, and that's why they can't handle that very well. So when we're talking about strategy, the strategy is what is the high-level approach, which I said we're going to apply patches within 20 days. Then when it doesn't get done, we as strategists and leaders have to determine why and fix or remediate the problem so it doesn't continue to occur. That's the CISO. Now, security engineers or IT folks that are going to go in and track the patches, they're going to assign them high, medium, or low, or 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, whichever qualitative approach you want to use. And they're going to go in and say, okay, critical 5s are going to be applied within 10 days. 4s are going to be applied within 15, and 3s are going to be applied within 18, and everything will be done in 20. I don't care about that. That's the technical, tactical side that the engineers and the IT folks take care of. So just sort of that division. The CISO or Chief Information Security Officer handles the strategy. This is what you're going to do. Are we doing it? And how do we fix it? The technical or tactical side is actually applying the patches, determining the testing, the verification, the validation, the rollout of that. CISOs aren't involved in the latter. And that's where I often find that disconnect, because you have a lot of these CISOs that are really better security engineers that still want to get into the tactical, technical details, and that's just not how it works. Now, yes, could somebody who's a really good security engineer that also understands the business, understands strategy, and understands leadership also be a CISO? Yes, but it shouldn't be a guaranteed career path. And this is a perfect example where I just sort of, sometimes when people make comments that I think they're trying to jab me, I just sort of smile going, dude, you made my point. And one of my videos, somebody actually criticized me. And I should know better, right? I always joke, I don't read social media because most of the people that comment are the ones that don't have a whole lot going on and get pleasure in insulting everyone out there, right? So they're usually not great comments, but I sort of laugh. This particular one was, if you want to be a CISO, there's only one path and one path only. You must work as a security engineer for 20 years, learn all the lessons, and then get promoted to a CISO. And then he continued to rag me for trying to teach people to be a CISO, going, this guy's going to go in and try to teach half-baked people how to be. And I'm like, dude, you didn't even take my training. You don't know what I'm going to teach. But yes, I'm giving you the skills you need to be a successful CISO, right? In my training classes, I teach you leadership. I teach you metrics. I teach you strategy. I teach you the things that security engineers need to be a CISO. And the whole point was, his comment was the reason why we have so many problems today in cybersecurity, because a CISO is not a glorified engineer. A CISO doesn't mean I worked at the company for 20 years as a security engineer, so you're going to give me the CISO title, but I'm going to keep doing what I've always done. I'm going to keep patching, technical, tactical. That is not a CISO, and that, my friends, is the problem. That's the mission that I'm on. That's the problem I'm trying to solve, that a CISO needs to have an understanding of cybersecurity. They need to have business, but they need to be leaders that are focused on strategy and not tactics. And as I've said in many of these episodes, there's nothing wrong with not wanting to be a CISO. There's nothing wrong with being 25-year security engineer that's getting paid $200,000 or $300,000 because you are the best in the business on technical tactics and implementation. That's awesome. But we need to break this mindset that a CISO is merely a technical promotion. We need to break this mindset that, as this person said, when I got 20 years experience, I demanded that the company made me a CISO or I was going to leave. And I'm just like, that's absurd, right? That's not how this works. Now, this person is probably an amazing security engineer. I would probably hire them in a second. To be fair, I don't know anything about them, but if you work in security for 20 years, you're probably pretty good. But just based on their comments, I'm like, I wouldn't want them leading my security team, right? Because they don't get it and they don't understand the difference between strategy and tactics. So it is critical that you recognize in your mind, which do you want to do? If you want to be the technical, tactical person, if you want to put out the fires, that's great, but don't be a CISO. A CISO is a separate job. It's not a promotional path for security engineers that have been in a job for 15 or 20 years. And if we could break that one pattern where just because you've been security or you've been in a company for a certain time frame, you deserve or demand to be a CISO, if we could break that habit and that pattern, things start to get better a lot faster and a lot quicker. And yes, once again, I should have always caveated this with love in my heart because I'm not trying to upset anybody. This is real life with Eric Cole. I'm giving you the truth. So some of you might like it and be going, absolutely. Some of you might be shaking your head. But trust me, if you look at the data, to be a good CISO, you need to be strategy, leadership, and understand the business. Really good tactical engineers do not necessarily make good CISOs. And I'll give you my simple CISO test. The simple CISO test is this. You get a phone call or a text or an email that one of your servers have been hacked. One of your servers at your company has been hacked, and they believe that critical data has been compromised and exposed. What do you do? If your immediate reaction is you're going to jump up, run into the data center, and go to that system and start looking at the logs to confirm or validate whether it's been compromised, you are an amazing security engineer. You are an amazing incident responder, but you should not be a CISO because that's not what you like to do. If your answer was, I'm going to immediately contact my security engineers and IT engineers, I'm going to immediately contact the administrator of that system, and I'm going to ask them to verify the logs and give me an update in 45 minutes and let me know what's going on. And then you immediately contact the executive team and tell them that there's a potential incident. You are currently gathering data and information, and you will give them an update within 45 minutes. Then guess what? You were born to be a CISO, right? You got it in your blood, right? You are ready to go, right? That is the difference. And remember, this is not right or wrong. I do this when I sometimes speak to CISOs. I give that test. And some CISOs get very angry with me. They're going, Eric, I'm a CISO. I've been a CISO for 5 years. And if I got that, I would immediately run into the data set and verify and validate it. I said, great. But you probably shouldn't be a CISO. How dare you? Once again, if you find your calling in life, why are we getting caught up on a title? Why do you care whether you have the title of CISO or not? It should be the job function that you do. One of the things my dad always taught me growing up, and I live by, if you find something you love to do, you never have to work a day in your life. I love helping people. I love teaching people. Honestly, I don't care what you call me. I always get on these calls and people are like, oh, should we call you Dr. Cole or should we call you? I'm like, honestly, you can call me any 4-letter words you want. I'm called. I don't care about that. I just care about the results. So if you're doing what you love, who cares about the title? If you love technical and tactics and you love that and you're getting paid well, who cares if you have the CISO title or not? It should be based on the job function that you want to perform, not a title. And I believe that's probably one of the big problems is people are so caught up with this, I need to be a CISO, I need to be a CISO, I need to be a CISO. It's like the cool title that they lose track of what it is. And then at companies, because it's not very well defined, they morph it into something it's not, and it ends up causing lots of security problems and issues. So let's define what a CISO is. A Chief Information Security Officer is a strategic position that manages projects at a high level, tracks metrics, and remediates problems. It is not a technical or tactical role, and you don't have your hands on the keyboard. That's the role. Now, you then decide whether that fits your desire and your passion or not, but it's really that simple. But let's not start changing the title of a CISO to be a glorified security engineer just because we want to have the title or we want to have a cool business card. That just doesn't get the job done. So I felt like I need to give a little more on that because I keep getting that. I'm sure this will raise a lot more with that, but hopefully if you re-listen to what I just said over the last 10 minutes, it'll start to resonate that it is a specific role, the CISO, and either you like to do that or you're not, but don't get caught up in the title. Get caught up on what do you love to do. And remember, if you find something you love to do, you never have to work a day in your life. And that's what I hope for. And that's what I do with my vCISO training that I'm pushing out there is really trying to find people that love strategy, that love leadership and was just never given the training and help them tap in to their full potential so they can love every day of their life. The other thing I want to cover that came up a lot, because last week I gave 6 different virtual keynotes on sort of the role of COVID and CISOs and things like that. And one thing that kept coming up is in January, most organizations put together an IT and security roadmap. They put together what are the core things that they need to follow on and do this year. And they started following that in January, putting together plans in February, and then March to April, depending on what state or what country you're in, all hell broke loose, right? All of a sudden, literally overnight, it was okay. Business as usual is put on hold, and we're going to do anything and everything necessary to support a remote workforce. How can we very quickly allow people to work remotely or work from anywhere in the country or the world and be able to access the information and access the data? Now, here's the problem. The question that was given wasn't the proper question. The question that was given to most organizations from the executive team was this: how do we support a remote workforce? Survival. How do we survive? How do we go in and continue to allow our business to make money, even though nobody can come in the office, nobody can get their laptops, and nobody can get anything they left the prior day, thinking they were going to come back the next morning and they're not? That was the question. That was the wrong question, but that was the question because it was all about survivability. The question that should have been asked, that wasn't asked, was how can we go in and support a remote workforce in a secure, flexible manner? How can we go in and be able to allow our employees to work from home with the same level of security and protection and controls that they would have if they were in the office? But very few companies actually asked that correct question, which is normal. If you've been in security or you've worked in security, you know the game. The game is quite simple. Functionality always leads, security always follows. Because I'll tell you right now, if you went back when a company literally overnight, no one is allowed back in the office and they need to make money, and you told any executive that we can support a remote workforce within 24 hours, but it might not be secure, or we can support a remote workforce in a secure manner, but it will take 4 weeks. So nobody can work for 4 weeks. Just the current stance that we are in today, unfortunately, most executives would have pushed the first option. They would have picked that first option every day. So it was, in hindsight, it was probably the right approach, even though it wasn't the correct approach when it comes to cybersecurity. So what happened was organizations did anything that was necessary. They allowed people to use unsecure wireless connections in their home. They allowed people to use personal computers that were outdated and unpatched, like XP and Windows 7 systems. They allowed data to very quickly be put up in the cloud, sometimes in free services that aren't very secure. They moved servers to the internet with public IP addresses very, very quickly. And they basically forgot that now that people are no longer in the office, most of the security architecture that would protect and secure people is no longer in play. When you're in the office and you surf to a website, there's typically 3 or 4 security devices that filter that request. When you're in the office and you receive an email with an attachment, at most companies, there's typically 5 or 6 different levels of protection that are in place. Now that you're at home working very quickly, in many cases, there was 0 because we didn't require that the endpoint computers have endpoint security or antivirus. We didn't require that they were patched. We didn't require that they were locked down. So essentially, we went from this assumption that I'm plugged into a secure network that's filtering, tracking, and monitoring the traffic to literally, as long as I can access the data and the information, regardless of whether anyone else can or any attackers can, that's good enough. And I know, once again, I give these presentations and I'll sometimes have security people or CISOs or other folks get very defensive going, Eric, you are making it sound a lot worse. Whoa. I'm not being critical. I'm not saying that anyone did anything wrong. You did what the executive team wanted. You didn't have a whole lot of choices. I'm not being critical here. I'm just laying out the facts of what happened and what occurred. Let me also help you out with something else. And once again, with love in my heart. When I say that, that means I might piss a few of you off, but I'm not intending to. With love in my heart, I want to teach you something. When you tend to get defensive or angry when somebody says something, that usually means it's striking a chord. It usually means somebody's right with what they're saying. I find that if somebody says something and I smile, yep, I'm fully aware. I know that I do that. But when somebody says something, I go, no, that's not true. I'm like, wait. Why did I do that? It's because something inside me wants to protect or defend against it. So one thing I found in my life that I do is whenever I get upset or angry or mad, I always stop, I pull out a journal and I go, okay, what is really going on here? Clearly, they said something that really bothers me, that there's probably some truth to that statement that I might want to examine or look at a little closer and see what's really going on. Well, once again, you can tell me to go pound sand, right, and ignore me, or you can say, maybe there is something there that I need to look more closely at. But here's what it ultimately comes down to. And this is one of my best pieces of advice when I coach folks. When I coach folks and they're telling me about problems, I take out a piece of paper and I fold it in half and I say, okay, on the left-hand side, let's write down facts. On the right-hand side, let's write down opinions. And let's make sure we differentiate between the two. Now, to be fair, companies overnight had to support a remote workforce. That is true. Companies allowed employees to use Windows 7, XP, and outdated systems. That is true. Companies completely and totally ignored security. That's an opinion. I don't have factual data to support that. Now, yes, maybe they shipped out firewalls to everyone's home that I don't know about. Maybe they didn't. But once I get additional data, I can then go in and say, okay, what additional questions do I need to ask in order to turn that opinion into a fact? So with my clients, when I said they ignored security and opinion, I asked them, I said, okay, when you switched to a remote workforce, what security guidance did you give your employees? None. What security software did you require them use? None. What security measures that you put in place? None. What did you do to replace all the security that was in your business? Nothing. We're going to worry about that later. Okay, guess what? Now that opinion's a fact. I just went in and validated that's a fact that the company didn't focus on security. And to be honest with you, if you're a CEO and it's all about going out of business or surviving, you're going to focus on survival every day of the week. So I'm not saying it was wrong, but I said all of that to say this. Our security roadmap that was created in January is not good, right? We need to go in and revamp it. Now, I know some companies are sitting there saying, but it's end of October, it's November. Let's just focus on putting together our new roadmap for 2021, and let's hope and pray that it's a less crazy year than this year was and move on. And there's some logic to that. However, I want to go in and share with you a little story about Target. If we go back to Target, I believe it was like 8-9 years ago, or maybe 10 when there was the Target breach. It was a long time ago. But at that point, at Target, security was buried under IT. So the CIO, the Chief Information Officer, was responsible for both IT and security. And in October, right around this time frame, the security folks went to the CIO and said, listen, we have vulnerabilities, we have exposures, we have things that could put us in big risk. We have servers accessible from the internet that are unpatched. We have major, major problems that need to be fixed. And the CIO looked at them and said, listen, my metric as a CIO is 5 nines. It's 5 nines, 99.999% uptime availability. We are right on the verge of meeting that. So if we go in and we start patching, updating, and changing a lot of servers in October, and servers go down or there's unplanned outages, we could miss our 5 nines and I won't get my bonus and I might not be able to keep my job. Famous last words. The CIO said, what could possibly happen in 2.5 months? Let's just put together a plan and let's address it in January. And then, of course, we know how this story goes. End of November, they got compromised. Significant data was stolen. And not only did that CIO not get their bonus, but they were fired very, very quickly for not properly addressing security. So I just want to put a little warning on that sitting there now, October, November, saying, okay, what could possibly go wrong in 2 months might not be the right approach. So here's what I recommend. And for all of our vCISO clients that we do this work for, we actually did this already in September, but you can do it now. Do a quick spot check. Go in and say, okay, what are major exposure points right now that cannot wait 2 months? What are things that if we don't make the executives aware of and address immediately is going to cause major problem, major issues, and major exposures to our organization, and fix those? And I will help you out right now. To me, one of the biggest ones is, what is your critical data and where is it located? What is that critical data and what is that critical information? Because let's face it, the difference between a major breach and a minor breach is all about the data that's compromised. So get control of your data, manage, and monitor it. So if anything, most of our clients are putting together data discovery and data classification projects just to protect and secure that data. Then the last 2 areas I would look at are endpoint exposure. If you have employees that are using personal computers that are unpatched with no endpoint security, that are outdated operating systems like Windows 7 or XP, ship them a new laptop. You can buy new laptops for $700. It's $100 to ship it. That is worth every penny of $800. That is too big a risk and exposure. And then just look at any systems or servers that are accessible from the internet and make sure that they are patched and they do not contain critical data. So that would be the quick mini assessment I would do to reassess our roadmap, make sure nothing is major exposure for the next 2 months, and then focus your energy on putting together a new, robust security roadmap for 2021. Once again, I hope you enjoyed this episode of Life of a CISO. Because I get so many questions on strategy and tactics, I wanted to spend some time going through that. But remember, a CISO is a senior strategic role. It's not technical. Give yourself the CISO test. If there was an incident in your organization, would you run into the data center or would you pick up phone calls and manage the incident? And that will quickly tell you where your passion is. Once again, there's nothing wrong with wanting to be a CISO. There's nothing wrong with not wanting to be a CISO. But the most important role is, remember, it's not a promotional path for a technical person. If you're one of those people that think if I'm a security engineer for 15 or 20 years, I deserve to be a CISO, the company must give me the title. I love you and I care about you, and don't get mad at me, but you are part of the problem. You're not part of the solution. There's nothing wrong with being a senior Uber security engineer or security evangelist. But if you fight for that title, you better be ready to switch roles to a CISO and be the security strategist, because that's what companies need. I would argue one of the big problems companies are suffering right now is we don't have proper security leadership because we don't have the CISO role clearly defined, and therefore we don't have the right people leading the security strategy for our organization. Once again, I'd always love to hear feedback. And thank you so much for listening to this episode. Please post some comments below. And I hope to hear from you next week. If I can help you in any way, shape, or form, please email me at ecole@secureanchor.com. If you're looking for resources to make your family and your kids safe, go to onlinedanger.com. If you're looking for resources to make your company safe, go to secure-anchor.com. And thank you so much for joining me on my mission to make cyberspace a safe place to live, work, and raise a family.